I never believed in fate. Not the way people romantically throw the word around, like the universe has some grand plan for us all. No, I believed in hard work, late nights, and a strong cup of black coffee. Not destiny, and certainly not him. Ethan Carter. Even thinking his name made my jaw tighten. He had been the thorn in my side since our very first literature class 3 years ago. Always one step ahead, always armed with a smirk that made me want to both slap him and, shamefully, kiss him. Not that I'd ever admit the latter to anyone, least of all to myself. He wasn't just my rival. He was my nemesis. Every semester, every competition, every debate in class, it was always Clara Bennett versus Ethan Carter. And somehow, despite my relentless efforts, he always managed to edge me out, by a fraction. Just enough to make it unbearable. So when they announced the winner of this year's prestigious writing contest, I already knew. I didn't even need to look at the envelope in the judge's hands. Still, I held my breath. And the winner is, the dean paused, dragging out the moment like a torturer. Ethan Carter! There it was. Applause erupted around me, but it felt distant like I was underwater. I swallowed hard, forced a tight smile, and clapped along with everyone else, even as my chest twisted painfully. Of course it was him. Ethan rose from his seat with that same irritating ease, his grin wide and confident, as if he knew all along that victory was his. And maybe he had. Maybe he always did. His eyes found mine across the auditorium, and for the briefest second, his expression flickered. Almost like, no, I refused to believe it, almost like he was looking for my reaction. I looked away first. Clara, are you okay? Emma, my best friend, leaned closer, concern in her voice. Her bright green eyes studied my face, reading every emotion I tried to mask. Fine. I lied. My voice tight. Totally fine. But I wasn't fine. Not even close. As the crowd dispersed, I kept my head high and walked toward the exit, my heart pounding with a mix of frustration and something far more dangerous, the shadow of admiration I couldn't seem to extinguish, no matter how hard I tried. Later that night, long after the celebration ended and the campus had quieted down, I sat alone in my cramped apartment. A half-empty bottle of red wine sat on the table beside me, a souvenir from my pity party. Emma's words echoed in my mind. You have to let it out, Clara. Write it down. Get it out of your system. Maybe she was right. I opened my worn leather notebook, the one I usually reserved for serious writing, and let my thoughts pour out in a reckless, unfiltered stream. To Ethan Carter, I hate the way you always seem so composed, as if nothing ever rattles you. I hate your smug grin, your perfect answers, your effortless charm. But what I hate most is that I can't stop noticing the way your eyes light up when you talk about the things you love, or the way your laugh sounds at the end of a joke you know is terrible. I hate that you make me feel this way. I hate that part of me wonders what it would be like if we weren't rivals. If, just for a moment, we were something else entirely. My pen stilled. What was I even doing? Heat rose to my cheeks as I reread the words. This wasn't some polished piece of fiction. This was raw, unedited confession. Mortified, I slammed the notebook shut and buried it under a stack of papers, as if that could erase what I had just written. It didn't. The words lingered in my mind long after I crawled into bed, taunting me, whispering truths I wasn't ready to face. If only I had known what fate, or whatever force I refused to believe in, had planned for that letter. If only I had known, I never would have written it. But it was too late, much too late. The next morning, sunlight streamed aggressively through my window, far too bright for the headache pounding at my temples. I groaned and buried my face in the pillow, willing the day to disappear. But life had other plans. A sharp knock on the door jolted me upright. Clara, open up, it's Emma. Dragging myself out of bed, I opened the door to find Emma standing there, coffee in one hand and a bag of pastries in the other. I come bearing bribes, she said cheerfully, waving the bag. You're forgiven, I mumbled, stepping aside to let her in. She set everything down and turned to me, her expression softening. Look, I know you're still stewing over last night, but you can't let Ethan Carter live rent-free in your head forever. I pressed my lips together, unwilling to admit just how deeply he'd taken up residence there. Emma wasn't wrong. But she didn't know the half of it. She didn't know about the letter, and I wasn't about to tell her. Instead, I tried to change the subject. What's on your schedule today? Emma, bless her heart, played along. Study group at 11, Faculty mixer this afternoon. Oh, and we're both supposed to drop off our project notes for the alumni event. I froze. The alumni event. In my haze of frustration and wine-induced honesty, I had completely forgotten that I'd promised to finalize my notes and hand them in today. Panic prickled at the back of my neck. My notebook. The letter. No. I rushed across the room, heart pounding, and yanked open the drawer where I had buried the notebook. Papers spilled out in a chaotic mess, but the notebook was gone. Gone. Emma, I said, my voice tight, did you see my leather notebook? The brown one? It was right here. She frowned. Didn't you have it at the mixer last night? Maybe you left it in the conference room? My stomach twisted painfully. No, I had taken it with me. I was sure of it, wasn't I? I snatched my coat and bolted for the door. Clara, where are you going? Emma called after me, but I was already halfway down the hall, dread curling in my chest like smoke. The campus was unusually quiet for a Saturday morning. My boots echoed against the stone path as I hurried across the quad, my mind racing through worst-case scenarios. Maybe it was still in the lecture hall. Maybe someone turned it into Lost and Found. Maybe, hopefully, no one had opened it. Maybe. I burst into the faculty building and made straight for the conference room. My eyes scanned every surface, every chair, every forgotten pile of handouts. Nothing. Panic swelled in my throat. Looking for this? His voice. Of course it was him. Slowly, I turned around, and there he stood in the doorway, my brown leather notebook in his hand, held between two fingers like it was something distasteful. Ethan Carter, the devil himself. My pulse roared in my ears as he stepped into the room, closing the door behind him with an infuriating calm. I found it this morning, he said, his eyes never leaving mine. Naturally, I assumed it was full of scathing critiques of my work, but imagine my surprise when I opened it and found... He flipped the notebook open, and my breath caught in my throat. This. No. Give it back, I managed, my voice hoarse. He raised an eyebrow. Oh, I will. But first, tell me, was this meant for anyone else, or am I the sole victim of your literary affections? Heat flamed across my cheeks, and I fought the urge to snatch the notebook from his hands. You had no right to read that, I snapped. Maybe not, he admitted, his tone maddeningly casual. But you left it wide open on the faculty table. Can you really blame me for being curious? Yes. 1,000 times, yes. But the words tangled in my throat. His gaze dropped back to the page, and he read aloud, his voice rich and smooth, as if savoring each syllable. I hate that you make me feel this way. I hate that part of me wonders what it would be like if we weren't rivals. Stop, I choked out, mortified beyond belief. But he didn't. If, just for a moment, we were something else entirely. The words hung in the air, heavier than lead. Finally, he closed the notebook and studied me, something unreadable flickering behind his eyes. Clara, he said softly, is this really how you feel? I swallowed hard, my heart thundering. Words failed me. Denial seemed useless. Defiance felt weak. And the truth, the awful, humiliating truth, was already out in the open. Silence stretched between us, taut and fragile. And then, to my utter shock, Ethan smiled. Not his usual smug grin, but something softer, something dangerous, something that made my knees go weak. I always suspected, he murmured as he placed the notebook on the table and slid it toward me, but it's nice to have confirmation. And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving me breathless, humiliated, and undeniably, unavoidably curious. The following days were unbearable. Everywhere I went, he was there. At the library, across the quad, in the cafe where I desperately tried to lose myself in work. And every time our eyes met, he held my gaze just a second too long, as if to remind me of my humiliation, as if to say, I know. Emma noticed, of course. She always did. Okay, what's going on between you and Ethan Carter? She demanded one afternoon, slamming her coffee cup onto the table with more force than necessary. I feigned innocence, flipping a page in my notebook. Nothing. Emma snorted. Please, he's looking at you like he knows all your secrets. That's because he does. I swallowed the confession and forced a tight smile. Honestly, there's nothing to talk about. But that wasn't true, not even close. Because the worst part wasn't the shame. It wasn't even the fact that he'd read my letter. It was the way my heart fluttered whenever I caught him watching me, the way my skin prickled with awareness when he passed too close. It was the way I caught myself wondering what his next move would be. And deep down, a terrifying thought whispered, what if I didn't hate it as much as I claimed? As if the universe itself was conspiring against me, Professor Hill assigned us to work together for the upcoming alumni gala. Your project proposals complement each other, she said brightly. I expect great things. Ethan glanced at me with a mischievous glint in his eyes. Looks like we're a team, Bennett. Wonderful. Trapped with my rival. My too charming, too handsome rival for an entire week of planning, meetings, and late nights. What could possibly go wrong? Our first meeting was tense. I arrived early, hoping to collect my thoughts before he showed up. But of course, he was already there, leaning casually against the window, sunlight catching the copper strands in his dark hair. You're early, I said, setting my bag down with more force than necessary. So are you, he countered smoothly. I pulled out my notes, determined to stay professional. Let's just get this over with. Always such enthusiasm, he teased, settling into the chair across from me. We dove into the project, discussing layouts and schedules, but beneath every word was an undercurrent of unspoken tension. His gaze lingered on me longer than necessary, his fingers brushing mine when we passed papers between us. Each accidental touch sent a jolt through me. Focus, Clara. But it was no use. By the second meeting, the line between rivalry and something dangerously close to attraction had begun to blur. Your ideas aren't terrible, he remarked, scribbling notes in the margin of my proposal. High praise coming from you, I shot back, unable to keep the edge from my voice. His lips twitched. You know, I always admired your fire. My breath caught. It was a simple comment, almost throwaway, but it ignited something inside me. A flicker of warmth, quickly fanned into flames. Before I could respond, he leaned back in his chair, studying me with a look that felt like it could see right through my defenses. I used to think you hated me because I kept beating you, he said quietly. But now I wonder if it's because I make you feel something you don't want to admit. His words hung in the air between us, charged and dangerous. I opened my mouth, a dozen retorts flashing through my mind, but none of them made it past my lips, because he wasn't wrong, and we both knew it. The night before the gala, we worked late in the campus hall, arranging final details. As I stepped back to review the setup, I felt Ethan's presence beside me, his shoulder brushing mine. The simple contact sent a wave of heat through me. You've done well, he said, his voice low. So have you, I replied, softer than I intended. Our eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world fell away. I should have looked away. I should have stepped back. But I didn't. Instead, I found myself searching his face, tracing the familiar curve of his smile, the warmth in his eyes that for once wasn't laced with competition. His gaze dipped to my lips. Dangerous territory. Clara, he murmured, as if my name alone carried the weight of everything unsaid between us. My pulse thundered in my ears. But before either of us could move, before whatever was about to happen, happened, a voice called from across the hall. Everything set for tomorrow? We sprang apart like guilty teenagers, and I busied myself with a stack of programs, pretending not to notice the slight flush that crept up Ethan's neck. But it was too late. The moment had passed. Or maybe, just maybe, it had only just begun. The day of the gala dawned crisp and clear, the autumn air laced with excitement. Emma and I arrived early to finish the last preparations, but my mind wasn't on table settings or seating charts. It was still tangled up in the moment from the night before. The almost kiss, the look in Ethan's eyes, the way my heart had thudded against my ribs like it was trying to escape. I told myself it was nothing, a moment of weakness, a slip. But deep down I wasn't so sure. As guests began to fill the hall, I forced a polite smile onto my face and moved through the crowd, greeting alumni and faculty alike. All the while I felt his presence like a magnet, pulling at the edges of my awareness. And then I saw him. Ethan, standing by the main entrance, charming a group of professors with his effortless grin. He looked impeccable in his dark suit, confident as always. And yet, when his gaze found mine, something in his expression softened. For a brief, reckless moment, I let myself wonder, what if? But the universe had other plans. As I passed by a cluster of faculty members, I caught a snippet of conversation that froze me in place. You should have seen it, one of them chuckled. Carter found this letter, absolute gold. She practically confessed her undying affection, and he read it aloud like it was part of his speech. Laughter followed, sharp and unforgiving. My blood turned to ice. No, he wouldn't have. Would he? I turned, searching the room until I found Emma. Did you hear what they just said? Her smile faltered. Clara. My chest constricted. Tell me it isn't true. But her silence told me everything I needed to know. Humiliation crashed over me in waves. My cheeks burned, my throat tightened, and my vision blurred as I fought to hold back tears. How could I have been so foolish? Of course it had all been a game to him. The looks, the touches, the lingering glances, all part of his twisted amusement. I couldn't breathe. Without a word, I turned and fled the room, slipping out into the cool evening air. The courtyard was deserted, save for the rustle of leaves in the breeze. I pressed a trembling hand to my chest, struggling to steady my heartbeat. Clara! His voice cut through the quiet, sharp with urgency. I spun around to find him striding toward me, his brow furrowed. Don't, I warned, my voice breaking. Just don't. Clara, listen to me, he said, closing the distance between us. Whatever you heard, it's not what you think. A bitter laugh escaped me. Isn't it? Because it sounded like you made a joke out of my feelings, like you used my letter to entertain your friends. His expression tightened with frustration. Not at me, I realized, but at the situation. I showed it to Professor Green because I needed advice, he said quickly. I didn't know how to handle it, how to handle you. I swallowed hard, my chest aching. You could have just talked to me. I should have, he admitted, his eyes shining with regret. But the truth is, Clara, you terrify me. That caught me off guard. Me? I whispered. You challenge me, he said, stepping closer, his voice rough with honesty. You always have. You push me, frustrate me, drive me insane, and I love it. I love you, Clara. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, he continued, his gaze searching mine. But I had to tell you, no games, no teasing, just the truth. Silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken emotions. Then, slowly, I let out a shaky breath. You're an idiot, I said, though my voice softened. A small, hopeful smile curved his lips. You're idiot? I rolled my eyes, but my heart fluttered. Maybe. His hand reached for mine, warm and steady. Can I prove it to you? Instead of answering, I rose onto my toes and kissed him. It wasn't a cautious, though uncertain kiss. It was full of frustration and longing, of all the things we hadn't said and everything we had felt for far too long. When we finally pulled apart, breathless, I met his gaze and found something there I had never expected: vulnerability. Consider yourself on probation, I teased, my lips curving into a smile. He laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair from my cheek. I'll take it. As we stood together beneath the autumn sky, I felt the weight lift from my chest, replaced by something lighter, something hopeful. Maybe I didn't believe in fate, but standing there with Ethan Carter, I started to believe in something else entirely. Something real, something worth the risk.